The red stamp came down hard enough to shake the water glasses. Personal denied. Grant Hollis moved to the next mileage form. Another stamp. Then another. 6 weeks of client site visits disappeared beneath red ink while 12 people watched from around the conference table. "These are signed work orders," I said. "They're mileage claims." "For work." Grant gave a short laugh. "Mara, we don't reimburse your commute just because you stopped somewhere along the way." A few people looked down. He pushed the stack toward me, red side up. "You used your own car. You cover your own fuel." Behind him, his open laptop was mirrored to the wall screen. A fleet tracking map sat minimized beneath the budget deck. For 1 second, when he closed the presentation, it expanded. Vehicle 17, Saturday. A blue route running from the west side of town to Lake Mercer, with stops at a building supplier and the marina. Grant saw me looking. He snapped the laptop shut. The shared field SUV had supposedly been in the shop that weekend. It had supposedly been in the shop for 6 weeks. I gathered my forms carefully because my hands had started to shake, and I refused to let Grant watch me crumple anything. The conference room was called the Gallery because Bellwether's founders had hung black and white photographs of the original laundry plant along one wall. In the oldest picture, 3 men in aprons stood beside a flatwork ironer the size of a locomotive. Steam clouded the upper half of the frame. Somebody had written 1978 in silver marker on the glass. Grant liked to hold finance meetings beneath that photograph. It made cutting costs look hereditary. "Can we move on?" he asked. Not to me, to the room. Nina Patel from payroll clicked her pen closed. Dean Mercer, the route supervisor, studied a coffee stain near his legal pad as though it had developed an interesting border. Across from me, operations manager Tom Bellwether, grandson of one of the men in the photograph and the reason the company name had one unnecessary second, rubbed the side of his nose. I waited for Tom to say something. He had approved 2 of the emergency visits himself. He only said, "We do need a cleaner process." Grant opened his laptop again. The tracking map was gone. "There is a clean process," he said. "Employees obtain written authorization before using personal vehicles. Finance verifies the business purpose. We reimburse legitimate expenses. My authorizations are attached. Those are work orders. One of them has your name on it." The room shifted. Not much. A chair creaked. Someone near the door exhaled through his nose. Grant pulled the top form back toward him and read it. "Ridgeway Surgical, 46 miles. 46.8. That earned another laugh, softer this time. I looked at Grant, not at anyone else. "You asked me to deliver a replacement sanitizer pump before their first linen cycle. I asked you to solve a client problem, and I solved it. Apparently with a scenic drive. That one got a smile from Dean before he caught himself. It vanished so quickly I almost admired the technique." Grant slid the form back onto the pile. "If we reimburse every employee who decides to play delivery driver, we won't have a company left to work for." The strange thing was Grant could make that sound reasonable. He had numbers. He always had numbers. Fuel spending was up 14%. Overtime was up 9%. 2 hospital groups had moved to disposable barrier products, and the new wash tunnel was still consuming more water than its manufacturer had promised. Grant had negotiated our natural gas contract when rates spiked and saved enough to keep the night shift intact. People remembered that. He also knew I had $43 in my checking account until payday. "Now," he said, turning toward the quarterly expense slide, "about unauthorized route deviations." The meeting lasted another 35 minutes. I wrote nothing down. I sat with the stamped forms beneath my palm and watched Grant explain discipline to people who had spent dawn untangling wet sheets from conveyor teeth. When it ended, chairs scraped back all at once. Everyone suddenly had somewhere urgent to be. Nina paused beside me. She was carrying 3 binders against her chest, each one labeled in the same tiny handwriting. "I thought you had approvals," she said quietly. "I do." Her eyes went to the red stamps. "I mean pre-approvals." "What's the difference?" She glanced toward Grant. He was showing Tom a fuel variance on his laptop. "Date," she said, and walked out. Grant caught me at the door. "Mara." I stopped. He waited until Dean passed us, then lowered his voice. "Don't turn this into a personal conflict." I looked down at the word personal stamped 6 times. "Wouldn't dream of it." His mouth tightened, though there was a flicker in his eyes that might have been amusement. Grant liked a sharp answer when it came from someone he considered safe. "You're good at the actual work," he said. "Better than I expected, frankly, but you have to understand scale. Bellwether has 186 employees. If everyone treats policy as optional because a client is upset, I can't control costs." Ridgway wasn't upset. Their sanitizer dosing pump had failed. They couldn't release clean carts. "I know what the pump does." "Then you know why I went." "I know why you think you went." That sentence landed differently, not louder, worse. What does that mean? It means people tell themselves stories that make their choices necessary. He nodded at the forms. "Take the lesson. Next time, wait for authorization." I had authorization, written authorization. I pulled the Ridgway work order free and held it up. His typed note appeared under the service ticket. "Resolve before first cycle. Client retention risk." Grant barely glanced at it. "That authorizes resolution. It doesn't authorize mileage." Then he walked back into the gallery and closed the door. Bellwether Textile Care sat between a beverage distributor and a company that rebuilt industrial pumps. From the parking lot, it looked like 3 beige warehouses arguing over the same loading dock. Inside, it was heat, steam, lint, and motion. Blue carts carried soiled clinic linens into the negative air sorting room. Clean goods came out the other end wrapped in plastic, each cart sealed with a numbered green tab. My job existed in the space between those 2 ends, where every mistake developed a customer. At 9:15, Ridgway Surgical reported 2 missing barrier linen carts. At 9:20, the RFID system claimed both carts were inside our clean holding area. At 9:27, I found them assigned to a dermatology clinic with a nearly identical account code. By 9:40, Dean had put them on Route 6 and was lecturing the driver about checking the 4th digit. "You can't name one Ridgway and the other Ridgeline," he complained as we watched the truck pull away. "That's not account management. That's a vision test." They were named before I got here. Everything bad was named before you got here. That's how companies work. Dean had laughed at Grant's scenic drive line, but now he stood beside me as if the meeting had never happened. He was good at that, too. He could separate discomfort into little locked rooms and visit only the one required by the moment. "Where's 17?" I asked. His expression changed. Vehicle 17 was a gray Ford Escape with a cracked cup holder and a permanent smell of eucalyptus disinfectant. Field coordinators used it for site inspections, emergency deliveries, and the occasional desperate search for a route driver who had taken the wrong highway. "Electrical problem," Dean said. "For 6 weeks? Intermittent electrical problem. Which shop?" He pointed toward the loading floor. "I have a driver who thinks East is a personality type." "Which shop, Dean?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "Ask Grant. Finance handles the fleet leases now." The dispatch keyboard hung behind him. 23 hooks, 22 tags. The empty hook for Vehicle 17 had a pale outline in the dust. I counted those keys every morning. It was an old habit from my Aunt Celia's uniform shop where missing van keys could turn a normal Tuesday into 6 restaurant managers demanding aprons at once. Coffee on the left corner of the desk, route exceptions in the red folder, keys counted before the first truck rolled, ordinary things done in the same order, because ordinary things were where expensive problems hid. "Did it come back at any point?" I asked. Dean picked up his radio. "Route 3, tell me you did not just leave St. Agnes with their isolation gowns still on your liftgate." The radio crackled. Dean turned away from me. I let him. 6 weeks earlier, the brass tag marked 17 had been gone on a Monday morning. Dean told me the Escape was having its alternator checked. That afternoon, a dialysis clinic lost half its scheduled scrub inventory when a cart seal split inside a truck. I used my Subaru to carry replacements. The following Thursday, Vehicle 17 was still unavailable when Harrow Endoscopy needed updated chemical test strips before an accreditation walkthrough. I drove those over too. Then came Ridgway's sanitizer pump. Grant had appeared at my desk at 4:40 with his suit jacket folded over one arm and the pump box under the other. He knew Ridgway's account history without checking a file. 3 missed deliveries in 8 months. A competitor offering introductory rates. Renewal due in November. This needs to be there before their 6 a.m. processing cycle, he said. 17 still isn't back. Then improvise. I'll need mileage. He was already turning away. Solve first, document later. I had left home at 4:30 the next morning. The pump rode upright in a laundry basket because its box kept tipping against the passenger door. At Ridgway, the facilities manager, Paul Emery, met me at receiving with 2 paper cups of coffee and the hollow look of a man whose machinery had been beeping at him all night. "You drove this out yourself?" he asked. "Unless you see a helicopter on the roof." He looked past me at my Subaru, which had 1 silver door and 3 dark blue ones. I was trying to be polite. Then yes, company helicopter. We installed the pump with Ridgway's maintenance lead, documented the lot number, ran the dosing test twice, and released their first linen cycle at 5:53. Paul signed the service order and drew a small star beside his name. Back at Bellwether, Grant saw me carrying in the empty box. "Handled?" he asked. "Handled." He gave me a single nod. From Grant, that had felt almost generous. Now that same trip was a scenic drive. At lunch, I took my forms to the cafeteria and spread them across a table beside the vending machines. The room smelled like tomato soup and dryer heat. Each claim had a service order. Each service order had a client signature or RFID event. Parking receipts were taped to 2 pages. On another, I had written the pump's serial number because Ridgway's receiving clerk had entered it incorrectly. My documentation was excessive. Grant had once praised me for it during a client dispute. Nina's word stayed with me. Date. I opened Bellwether's policy portal on my phone and found personal vehicle use. The document showed a revision date from 8 months earlier. It required supervisor approval but did not say written, advance, or pre-approval. I took a screenshot. Then I checked the version attached to the meeting invitation Grant had sent that morning. That copy required written authorization before travel. Revision date, yesterday. A shadow crossed the table. Tom Bellwether set down a bowl of soup and looked at the spread of red stamped pages. "You're not letting this go," he said. "Should I?" He sat across from me. Tom was 50, broad-shouldered and permanently rumpled, as if the plant had washed him on the wrong cycle. He knew every machine operator by name and avoided conflict with the concentration of a bomb technician. "Grant's under pressure. So am I. The bank review is in 2 months. He's trying to show expense discipline. By making me pay Bellwether's expenses?" Tom stirred his soup. "He thinks field staff have gotten loose." "Do you?" "I think the rules haven't kept up with the company." "That isn't an answer." "No." He tasted the soup, winced, and added pepper. "It's the answer you get from someone whose last name is on the trucks." I showed him the 2 policy versions. He stopped stirring. For a moment, I thought he might finally give me something solid. Instead, he handed back my phone. "Be careful with this." "Why?" "Because being right about a document and winning an argument are different jobs." He carried his soup to another table. At 2 o'clock, an email arrived from Grant. Effective immediately, emergency client deliveries required director-level written approval. Personal vehicles were prohibited unless no fleet vehicle could be made available. Violations could result in unreimbursed expenses and corrective action. At 2:16, Dean reassigned Ridgway and Harrow to another coordinator. At 2:20, Paul Emery emailed asking why Ridgway's service contact had changed. I stared at the message until the letters blurred, then opened my rewrote exception folder and wrote down the time. At 5:40, the plant began to empty. The wash floor quieted one machine at a time. I carried the exception folder to dispatch and reached for my coffee out of habit, though it had been cold since morning. The brass tag marked 17 hung from its hook. A fresh pine needle was caught in the split ring. I touched the key. The metal was still warm. Behind me, Grant said, "You really should stop counting things that aren't your responsibility." I closed my hand around the tag and turned to face him. Grant's eyes dropped to my fist. Put the key back. It was warm. So is the building. The building doesn't usually have pine needles. He held out his hand. I let the tag fall into his palm. He closed his fingers around it and gave me the patient expression people use when they want witnesses to remember them as the calm one. "Vehicle 17 has an intermittent charging fault," he said. "The leasing company asked us to road test it under sustained use." "On Saturday?" "Yes, Mara. Cars also operate on weekends." "To Lake Mercer." Something hardened behind his face, but his voice stayed level. "Fleet vehicles go where company business requires them to go." "What company business is at a marina?" "Vendor relationship management. With a building supply stop on the way?" Grant glanced toward the dispatch doors. 2 second-shift drivers were finishing paperwork at the far counter. Neither appeared to be listening. Both had stopped talking. "You saw a route on a screen for perhaps 2 seconds, he said. "Now you're constructing a story because your expense report was denied. You said people do that. I said they make their choices feel necessary. Did the leasing company ask you to test the cup holder, too?" His mouth almost moved. That was one of the things that made Grant difficult. He could enjoy being challenged while punishing the person who challenged him. He returned the key to its hook. "Go home." "I'll need written authorization." "For what?" "The drive." This time he did smile. "Your commute is still personal." I picked up my red folder and left him standing beneath the keyboard. The next morning, my fleet dashboard login returned an access error. I tried twice, then sent a ticket to IT. The reply came 7 minutes later. Finance had reduced tracker access to department heads during a licensing review. Grant had noticed resistance and moved before breakfast. The brass tag for Vehicle 17 was gone again. I wrote the date and time in the route exception folder. Then I stopped, stared at my handwriting, and crossed it out. The folder belonged to Bellwether. Anything inside it could be called operational work product, removed from my desk or rewritten by someone with better access. Grant had taught me that much with the policy document. I opened the Notes app on my personal phone and recorded only what I had directly observed. Vehicle 17 key absent, 6:11 a.m. No conclusion, no accusation. At 7, a steam valve stuck open on wash tunnel 2. By 7:10, the production floor felt like the inside of a kettle. Cleanside staff pushed wrapped carts away from the condensation while maintenance shut down the line. Grant came onto the floor in shirt sleeves. He was not one of those executives who stood behind the yellow safety line and asked whether everything was fixed yet. He knew which tunnel shared boiler capacity with the surgical linen dryers. He told production to move the clinic loads to Tunnel 1, delayed hospitality goods, and got our chemical supplier to rush a compatible valve before noon. At one point, he held a flashlight while Luis from maintenance reached behind a hot pipe. "That suit dry clean only?" Luis asked. "It was," Grant said. People laughed. By lunch, the line was running. Grant's pale blue shirt had a rust streak across the shoulder, and the company had avoided a full lost shift. I hated that I admired him for it. He passed my desk carrying a pair of borrowed safety glasses. "Sometimes," he said, "solving the problem is enough." "Did you document the valve authorization?" He kept walking. Nina came by after payroll closed. She placed a small yellow sticky note beside my keyboard. "Submit through formal review. Ask for basis in writing." "That sounds like advice," I said. "It's a reminder of process." "Whose process?" She adjusted one of the binders in her arms. Payroll retains reimbursement documents for 7 years. I looked at her. She looked toward the corridor before continuing. A revised policy governs expenses submitted after its effective date. It doesn't automatically govern expenses incurred before that date. Automatically? I'm not giving you a legal opinion. I didn't ask for one. Good. She started to leave. Nina, did Grant tell you to stamp every claim? Her shoulders drew slightly inward. He told finance the trips lacked proper authorization. Did you agree? My agreement isn't a field in the system. She walked away with her binders held tight against her chest. I resubmitted all 6 claims through the formal review portal. I attached the policy version in effect on each travel date, the client work orders, parking receipts, RFID activity, and Grant's Ridgeway instruction. In the comments field, I asked finance to identify the specific policy language supporting each denial. Then I waited. Waiting at Bellwether was rarely quiet. Phones rang. Carts squealed. The folding line snapped sheets into clean rectangles with the regular slap of cards being dealt. Every few minutes, someone appeared at my desk with a shortage, a mislabeled bag, or a seal number that existed in 3 places at once. Grant waited better than I did. He let the request sit for 2 days. On the 3rd afternoon, his assistant asked me to come to his office. His windows faced the loading dock, not the street. He said he preferred watching things leave on schedule. On his wall hung a framed chart showing Bellwether's debt falling over 5 years. There were no family photographs, no diplomas, nothing soft enough to invite a question. My 6 claims sat in a neat stack before him. I'm willing to resolve this, he said. That's why I resubmitted. He slid a fuel card across the desk. $50, one-time discretionary reimbursement. My claims total $486. The company won't reimburse unauthorized mileage. The policy didn't require advance written approval when I took those trips. Grant placed one finger on the fuel card. Take this. Withdraw the claims. We close the matter. What about the corrective note? His expression told me there was one before he opened the folder. The note described a pattern of poor judgment, disregard for transportation controls, and confrontational behavior during a routine expense review. There was a signature line at the bottom. This is dated today, I said. Yes. The meeting was 3 days ago. The conduct is ongoing. I read the page twice. Not because it was complicated, but because I wanted him to sit in the silence with me. The performance bonus for my position was discretionary. My first eligibility review was in 5 weeks. If I sign this, what happens to my bonus? That depends on your performance. And if I don't? The note still goes in your file. Your signature only acknowledges receipt. He nudged a pen toward me. I left it where it was. You told me to solve Ridgeway's problem, I said. I told you to solve it within policy. You knew 17 wasn't available. You assumed that made your car a company vehicle. You knew I drove there. You saw me bring back the box. Mara, this is exactly what the note describes. I looked at the fuel card. $50 was groceries. It was most of the replacement sensor my mechanic said the Subaru would need soon. It was enough to make refusal feel theatrical. Grant knew that. He had not chosen a round number by accident. If I take this, I said, does finance correct the reason for denial? No. So the record still says the trips were personal. The record says what finance determined. I pushed the card back. Grant leaned into his chair. He looked disappointed, and somehow that angered me more than the laughter had. You're choosing a very expensive principle. You made it expensive. No, your inability to let go made it expensive. I folded the corrective note and placed it in my bag. That copy stays here, he said. Then make me one. For the first time, his control slipped. His jaw tightened before he pressed the intercom and asked his assistant to copy it. The next week, my Subaru's warning light came on halfway to my Aunt Celia's shop. The engine shuddered at a red light, recovered, then shuddered again. I turned around before the highway and drove straight to my mechanic. He replaced the failing sensor and found a cracked hose. The total was $198. I paid with the credit card I had almost cleared. Celia sent me a photograph of 2 takeout containers on the cutting table, followed by, "Your noodles are developing abandonment issues." I called her from my apartment parking lot. "Car trouble," I said. "That car has been trouble since the Obama administration. It's a 2016. Exactly. Historic." I laughed despite myself. Her shop had supplied uniforms to half the restaurants downtown until national rental companies started underbidding her. She survived by taking the accounts that required actual thought, alterations, unusual embroidery, last-minute replacements, managers who changed logos every time they changed cocktails. "What happened at work?" she asked. "Why does something have to have happened?" "Because you laugh from your throat when you're trying not to say something." I told her about the claims, not the tracker map, not yet. Saying it aloud would make it an accusation, and accusations had weight. Celia listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "Do you need the money?" "I'm fine." That wasn't the question. "I can manage." That also wasn't the question. I stared through the windshield at the building across from mine. Someone had left a lamp on behind closed blinds. "Yes," I said. "I need it. I'll send it." "No, Mara, I need them to pay it." She was quiet for a moment. "Those are 2 different needs," she said. "I know." "Good. Then don't confuse starving one with feeding the other." "I'm not starving. You just canceled noodles." "I postponed noodles." "Now you sound like finance." The next morning, Ridgway reported a shortage of sterile barrier wraps. Their new coordinator marked the request for the afternoon route, missing the note that their procedure schedule required delivery before 10. Paul Emery copied me on his second email. "Mara, is there a reason the response standard changed with the contact?" I forwarded the message to the new coordinator and Tom. Then I walked to dispatch. Dean was assigning liftgate checks. "Don't," he said when he saw me. "They need those wraps by 10. Not your account. Route 8 passes within 4 miles. Grant said all changes go through the assigned coordinator. Grant isn't standing in a receiving bay with an empty, clean room." Dean lowered his voice. "You think I don't know that?" "Then put the cart on Route 8. He glanced through the dispatch window. The brass tag marked 17 hung on its hook. "I can't keep stepping between you 2. "You haven't stepped between us once." That hurt him. I saw it, and I was too angry to take it back. Dean picked up the route sheet, wrote Ridgway's cart number at the bottom, and radioed the driver. The wraps arrived at 9:42. At 10:03, Paul sent a message thanking the team and specifically noting that I had preserved their schedule. I printed it and placed it behind Grant's corrective note at home. At 11, Grant removed my authority to amend routes. He did it politely in an email copied to Tom and Human Resources, citing role clarity and my need to rebuild trust. Dean avoided me for the rest of the day. Near the end of the shift, he appeared beside my desk with 2 vending machine coffees. He put one down without asking. "I shouldn't have laughed in that meeting," he said. "No. I laugh when I'm nervous. You should see a doctor." He gave me a tired smile. Then he reached into his shirt pocket and placed a folded maintenance slip beneath the coffee cup. Vehicle 17 had received its electrical inspection 5 weeks earlier. No fault found. No additional service recommended. "Where did you get this?" "It was in the glove box Monday morning." "Why were you in the glove box?" "Registration check." "Who brought the vehicle back?" Dean looked toward the hall. "Every Sunday night," he said. "Grant parks it behind finance instead of returning it to the fleet row. Monday morning, I move it before the drivers arrive." "How long?" His eyes stayed on the coffee. "Since May." "Why?" "Because Grant told me to." He pushed away from the desk before I could ask anything else. 2 days later, Bellwether's annual audit notice appeared on the company calendar. Fleet utilization, fuel reconciliation, insurance classifications, lease mileage, and vehicle controls. External auditor, Denise Park. Grant accepted the invitation within 3 minutes. Then he added me as document support. That was either carelessness or a trap. Grant did very little carelessly. 10 minutes after adding me, he appeared at my desk with a printed audit checklist. "Denise will need a clean fleet packet," he said. "Vehicle assignments, lease schedules, fuel card controls, maintenance history, utilization by department. You removed my tracker access. You don't need live access to assemble records. So finance will choose the records, and I'll put them in a binder. You'll organize them. Alphabetically or strategically?" Grant rested one hand on the edge of my desk. "This is why people are beginning to question your professionalism." "Which people?" "I'm giving you an opportunity to demonstrate that your documentation skills can serve the company instead of a grievance." The audit checklist included a space for preparer initials on every section. My initials would sit beneath whatever exports finance gave me. I slid the paper back. "I'll assemble source records I can verify. Anything supplied by finance will be labeled as supplied by finance." "That sounds defensive." "It's accurate. Auditors don't like attitude. Is there a checkbox for it?" His gaze stayed on mine for several seconds. Then he picked up the checklist. "Tuesday, 9 a.m. gallery." The night before the audit kickoff, my performance bonus notice arrived. Award 0. The explanation was one sentence long. "Employee is not currently demonstrating the judgment and cross-functional cooperation expected at this level." I had known it was coming. Knowing did not make the number look less obscene. The bonus would have been $1,800 before taxes. I opened my banking app, looked at the credit card balance from the Subaru repair, and closed it again. Then I printed the notice. My apartment printer left a faint gray line down the center of every page. Grant's sentence came out split neatly through the word cooperation. I put it behind the corrective note, Paul's email, the 2 policy versions, and my denied claims. The folder was getting thick enough to resist being closed. Denise Park arrived at 8:50, carrying a black laptop bag and a stainless steel bottle covered in dents. She was small, silver-haired, and dressed in a charcoal suit with flat shoes. Grant met her in the lobby with the particular warmth he reserved for people who could write things about him. "Denise, good to see you. You remember Tom?" I remember Tom promising to replace the missing mileage logs. Tom gave her a pained smile. "We replaced the process." That wasn't my sentence. She shook my hand when Grant introduced us. "Mara is our regional service coordinator," he said. "Very detail-oriented. She'll help organize operational support." The compliment sounded clean. If I had not known him, I would have taken it home. Denise looked at my binder. "Did you prepare the fleet packet?" "I prepared the operating records. Finance prepared the financial exports." Grant smiled. "Mara believes strongly in attribution." "Most auditors do," Denise said. We went into the gallery. Denise did not begin with expenses. She began with keys. "Who can take a fleet vehicle?" Dean sat 2 seats from me, a legal pad unopened in front of him. Route drivers, field coordinators, maintenance, department managers. "Is there a checkout log?" "For most vehicles." Denise looked over the top of her glasses. "Which vehicles are exempt from being most?" Grant answered. "Department-assigned units. My vehicle, Tom's truck, the sales vans. Vehicle 17, shared field unit. Checkout log." Dean's fingers pressed into the edge of the pad. "Dispatch keyboard. A board isn't a log. We track sign-outs on the route sheet." Denise turned to me. "Do you have those?" "Route sheets are retained for 90 days. "All of them?" "As far as I know." Grant opened the binder to the tab I had labeled Dispatch. We provided the complete period. Denise did not touch it. "Who administers telematics?" "Finance," Grant said. "Who reviews exceptions?" "Finance and operations." "Which person?" Grant's smile thinned. "It depends on the exception." She wrote something down. For 2 hours, she moved through lease mileage, insurance classifications, driver lists, fuel cards, and maintenance. Grant knew every total. When Denise asked why 3 trucks had exceeded their mileage bands, he explained the hospital consolidation that had shifted 2 routes north. When she questioned an increase in idle time, he connected it to loading delays during the wash tunnel installation. He was good. Not just prepared, good. Then she opened my section. The Ridgeway pump work order sat on top because it was the clearest emergency visit in the sample. "What happened here?" she asked. Grant answered before I could. "Client service exception. Resolved before production impact." Denise traced the timestamps with one finger. Request entered 4:41 p.m. Pump received 5:27 the next morning. 46 miles claimed. "Denied," Grant said. "Why?" "Unauthorized personal vehicle." She looked at me. "Vehicle 17 was unavailable," I said. "Maintenance." That was what I was told. Grant leaned back. Mara elected to drive rather than wait for a company vehicle. "You told me to improvise. I told you to resolve a client issue." Denise glanced between us, then toward Tom. "Was the trip for business?" Tom shifted in his chair. "The pump delivery was." That wasn't an abstract question. "Yes," he said. "Mara drove there for business." Denise wrote another note. Grant's pen tapped once against the table. "Business purpose does not eliminate the authorization requirement." "Show me the policy in effect on the travel date," Denise said. Grant opened the policy tab and handed her the revised version. I placed the earlier version beside it. The two documents looked almost identical except for the sentence Grant had added and the date at the bottom. Denise read both. "When was this revision approved?" Grant said, "As part of a broader expense control initiative." Date. The document contains the revision date, approval date. "I'll have Nina provide the change record." Nina was sitting near the door. For the first time all morning, she spoke. "The portal revision was uploaded at 7:43 p.m. the day before the expense review meeting." Grant turned toward her. Nina's face had gone pale, but her voice remained steady. "The previous version was active when the expenses were incurred," she added. Denise capped her pen. "Then I'll need both versions in the work papers." Grant looked at me as if I had ventriloquized Nina from across the room. The meeting broke for lunch at 12:30. Dean vanished onto the loading floor. Tom claimed he needed to inspect a boiler gauge, which was the kind of urgent task that usually belonged to 3 other people. Grant asked me to stay. Denise closed her laptop but remained seated. "Mara," Grant said, "your role here is document support. You're not authorized to introduce a personnel dispute into a financial audit. The claims are in the fleet sample, because you put them there." "They match the sampling criteria," I said. "I selected the sample," Denise said. Grant gave her a courteous nod. "Of course. My concern is that a routine reimbursement disagreement is creating noise around the underlying controls. A disputed business trip is an underlying control. She has an active corrective matter connected to these claims." Denise looked at me. "Do you?" "I have a performance note written after I challenged the denials." Grant's chair moved sharply against the floor. "You see the problem," he said. "She's framing every management response as retaliation." Denise put her laptop into its bag. "I see a chronology. I haven't framed it yet." Grant stood. "Mara, go to lunch." In the cafeteria, I bought crackers from the vending machine and couldn't make myself open them. My hands were cold despite the heat from the plant. Nina sat across from me. "I'm sorry," she said. "For which part?" "I should have said something at the first meeting." "Yes." She flinched. I hated that I felt guilty for not making forgiveness easy. "What changed?" I asked. "Grant asked me this morning to certify that the revised policy had been communicated during your onboarding." "Was it?" "No." "What did you tell him?" "That the onboarding acknowledgement references the portal version by link. It doesn't preserve a copy. So he wanted you to say I'd agreed to language that didn't exist yet. He said the revision clarified an existing expectation. That isn't what I asked." "No," she said, "it isn't." She turned the unopened cracker package until the print faced her. "Finance isn't supposed to decide whether people deserve their own records," she said. "We're supposed to preserve them." It was the closest thing to anger I had heard from her. Denise spent the afternoon tracing my 6 trips. She matched parking receipts to service timestamps, RFID events to clinic receiving logs, and odometer distances to mapping estimates. Harrow's test strip delivery ran 2 miles shorter than I had claimed, until she included the construction detour recorded in the route alert. One trip ran 0.6 of a mile longer. I rounded down, I said. Grant was no longer in the room. He had been called to a lender meeting, though his assistant came in twice to collect papers and once to bring Denise coffee she had not requested. By 4, Denise had marked each trip as having a documented business purpose. She did not say I should be paid. She did not need to. The check marks were enough to loosen something in my chest that had been locked since the red stamp hit the table. Why was the shared field unit unavailable for all 6? She asked. Finance told operations it had an intermittent electrical fault. Maintenance history shows 1 inspection. No fault found, I said. She looked up. You've seen the report? Dean found a copy in the glove box. Where is it? I had placed the folded maintenance slip inside the operating packet under Vehicle 17. Denise smoothed it flat. Who used the vehicle during this period? I don't have access to the tracker anymore. Anymore? My access was removed after the expense meeting. She wrote down the date. I chose my next words carefully. The live dashboard briefly showed a Saturday route to Lake Mercer. What Saturday? The day before the claims meeting. Did you save it? No. Did you have authorization to view it? It appeared on the conference room screen from Grant's laptop. Denise studied me for a moment. What are you asking me to do? Compare the company vehicles. Against what? Fuel use, maintenance status, and assigned purpose. Same period. All vehicles? Yes. If your concern is Vehicle 17, say Vehicle 17. My concern is whether the standard used to deny employee mileage was also applied to company mileage. That made her lean back. It was not dramatic. She simply stopped writing and considered the sentence. Then she said, I'll request the raw telematics export. Grant came to my desk at 5:10. We can still fix this, he said. I kept entering a cart correction. The audit? Your situation. He placed a document beside my keyboard. Finance would reimburse all 6 claims as a management exception. In return, I would acknowledge that the trips had lacked required authorization, withdraw the formal review, and agree that the matter was resolved without policy violation. You added a confidentiality paragraph. It's standard. It says I can't discuss the reimbursement with other employees. We don't encourage people to compare personnel matters. You compared mine in front of 12 people. His voice dropped. Sign it and I'll reconsider the bonus. Correct the denial reason. The reason was valid. Then why pay me? Because $486 is not worth this disruption. It was worth it when it belonged to me. He drew a slow breath. The bank is evaluating our operating discipline. If Denise turns this into a control deficiency, it affects financing for the new plant. That affects every person here. Then your controls should survive comparison. You think this is courage because you don't understand the consequences. I understand mine. He took the document back. The following morning, my desk had been moved from the operations corridor to an empty workstation beside the clean linen scale. Grant called it temporary roll separation during the audit. Every sealed cart passing the scale squeaked against one loose floor tile. By 10, the sound had worked its way behind my eyes. My account access was reduced to client records I still owned. Harrow disappeared. Ridgeway disappeared. Even historical fleet notes were gone. At 11, Denise walked past my new desk with her laptop bag. Roll separation? She asked. That's what I'm told. Convenient location. A cart squeaked between us. I've had worse offices. I haven't. She continued toward the gallery. Grant had supplied a telematic summary showing total weekday and weekend mileage by department. Vehicle 17 appeared inside operations, mixed with 5 other units. Denise rejected it and requested the provider-level trip export with unit identifiers, ignition times, stops, and odometer readings. Finance said the export would take 2 weeks. Denise called the fleet provider from the gallery and received it in 11 minutes. By then, Grant had joined her. Tom stood near the window. Nina brought in the fuel card ledger. Dean remained by the door, holding his unopened legal pad. I was not invited, but the clean linen scale was 20 feet away, and the gallery's glass wall carried voices when the wash tunnel paused. Denise loaded the export. Rows filled the screen. She filtered for Vehicle 17. Weekday trips appeared first. Clinics, the leasing office, Bellwether, a chemical supplier. Then she sorted by day of week. The room went quiet. Blue routes spread across the map, Saturday after Saturday. West Side to Lake Mercer. Building supplier, marina, golf club. A lakeside road with no Bellwether client within 18 miles. Denise clicked the first route, then the next. She stopped at the Saturday routes. Grant said, "Those were vendor development trips." Denise looked at the ignition history. Every weekend? They were authorized. By whom? Grant did not answer. On the screen, Vehicle 17 left the lakeside road late Sunday evening and returned to Bellwether through the rear finance lot. Denise turned toward Dean, who moved it Monday mornings. Dean's legal pad bent in his hands. "I did," he said. Grant stood so quickly his chair struck the wall. Denise clicked export. "Sit down, Grant," she said. "We're not finished." Grant stayed on his feet. "This has moved outside the agreed audit scope." Denise folded her hands on the table. "Fleet utilization is listed on page 1 of the engagement letter. Vendor development is a legitimate use. Then sit down and show me the vendors." His face had gone pale around the mouth. He looked toward Tom, but Tom was staring at the screen. Denise turned the map off and replaced it with the trip table. Dates, ignition times, distances, stops. She highlighted 12 Saturdays and 9 Sundays. "Who assigned Vehicle 17 to you?" "As Finance Director, I have fleet authority. That means you control assignments. It doesn't mean every vehicle is assigned to you." Operational needs don't always fit neatly into a checkout sheet. Whose operational needs? Grant pressed both hands against the table. Dean spoke from the door. He kept the key. Grant turned, careful. Dean's legal pad straightened in his hands. "You'd take 17 Friday afternoon. You'd bring it back Sunday night behind finance. You told me to move it before the morning count." "I told you to make sure the fleet row was ready for service. You told me not to log it because department head use was exempt, which it is." Denise looked at Nina. "Is department head use exempt from fuel reconciliation?" "No." "From business purpose documentation?" "No." "From personal use reporting?" Nina's answer took longer. "No." Grant finally sat. The fuel card ledger gave the routes prices. Friday fill-ups near Bellwether. Saturday fuel near Lake Mercer. A car wash on 3 Sunday evenings. Denise matched dates without commentary, using a yellow highlighter that squeaked across the paper. Tom shifted near the window. "Grant, what's at the lake?" "A property I'm improving." The sentence seemed to leave the room colder. "For Bellwether?" Tom asked. "For mixed use." "What does that mean?" "I've hosted vendors there. I've had strategic conversations there that benefited this company." Denise turned the map back on and clicked the building supply stop. "What did you buy here?" "I don't remember every purchase." Nina opened the corporate card ledger. Cedar decking, exterior screws, 2 gallons of marine varnish. Grant's eyes cut toward her. She kept reading. Dock bumpers, a propane fire table. Delivery address on the decking order matches the lake property. Tom stared at the table. "You put that on the company card?" The property was being prepared for vendor events. "Was there an approved event budget?" Grant leaned toward him. "Do you want to discuss approved budgets? Because I can show Denise 6 years of your family authorizing projects in hallways and asking finance to make them work afterward." Tom's face reddened. Grant looked around the room, and for a moment I saw the version of the story he had been telling himself. He had saved Bellwether money while the owners made promises. He had worked late, worked Saturdays, remembered every route variance and debt deadline. Somewhere along the way, the company's lack of discipline had become permission for his own. "I spent 5 years building controls in a company that treated receipts like optional reading," he said. The lake house was supposed to become a place for supplier meetings. We discussed it. You mentioned it at dinner, Tom said. You said it was a smart idea. I thought you meant your house. It is my house. With our deck? The silence held until Denise uncapped her pen. I'll need the supplier invoices, card approvals, vehicle assignment history, insurance classification, and any record of vendor events at the property. Grant looked at her. This can be resolved as a reclassification. That depends on the records. It's personal use mistakenly categorized as business. Denise's eyes moved to the wall screen, where 12 blue Saturday roots waited in a column. Mistakenly, she said. Grant's assistant appeared in the doorway and told him the bank representative was holding. Tell him I'll call back. He said it's about the plant financing. Grant stood again. Denise closed her laptop. Preserve the fleet data and expense records before you make that call. His gaze moved through the room and found me behind the glass. He knew I had heard everything. By noon, my access to the client system stopped working entirely. IT called it an automated security hold connected to an active personnel review. The timing was almost elegant. I took a paper shortage report from the clean linen scale and walked it to Tom's office. If I can't see accounts, I can't coordinate service. He was sitting with his door open, jacket off, tie loosened. The framed photograph behind his desk showed the original plant crew standing beside a delivery truck. Grant had once told me Tom kept history close because it saved him from making decisions. I know, Tom said. Ridgway has a renewal meeting next week. I know. Harrow's accreditation follow-up is Thursday. I know, Mara. Then do something that uses a different verb. He looked up. There were deep circles beneath his eyes. I felt sympathy for him and resented myself for it. The owners are meeting with Denise and outside counsel, he said. Grant has been asked to remain available but step away from approvals. Has he been asked to stop managing my job? Yes. My system says otherwise. Tom picked up his phone, called IT, and restored my operational access while I stood there. It took 4 minutes. When he hung up, he said, I should have intervened in the expense meeting. Yes. I thought Grant would cool down if I didn't corner him. He used the space. I see that. You saw it then. Tom rubbed his forehead. That's also true. The answer did not repair anything, but it was the first one he had given me without wrapping it in company language. I went back to work. Ridgway needed confirmation that its emergency inventory had been restored. Harrow had 3 chemical records filed under the wrong month. Route 3 still had a driver who considered East a negotiable concept. At 2, Paul Emery sent me a photograph of the sanitizer pump mounted on Ridgway's wall. Under it, he wrote, Still doing the job. Unlike some departments I could name. I printed that one too. Grant was placed on administrative leave before the end of the day. He came past my desk carrying his laptop bag. The squeaky cart tile announced every step between us. You got what you wanted, he said. I looked at the scale display until the cart weight stabilized. I wanted my mileage paid. You wanted to prove something. Yes. His laugh had no humor in it. At least that's honest. Did you really plan to host vendors at the lake house? I already had 2 supplier dinners. One helped us renegotiate detergent pricing. With the fire table? It was February. I almost smiled. He saw it and did too, briefly. Then his face settled. You think records are clean things, he said. They aren't. They only show what someone decided to count. That's why you didn't count the key. His eyes narrowed. You could have taken the settlement. You could have corrected the claims. I couldn't let every field employee decide urgency canceled controls, but you let yourself decide. I was accountable for the outcome. So was I. Ridgway got its pump. The cart beside us squealed over the loose tile. Grant glanced toward the gallery. The financing could stall. That new plant means 60 jobs and enough capacity to keep the clinic business profitable. If that falls apart because Denise has to report a fleet control deficiency, remember how this started. with you stamping personal on company work. It started before you were hired. Then you had more time to fix it. He adjusted the strap of his laptop bag. You are very good at this job, he said. You're also going to discover that being right makes people trust you less, not more. That sounds like experience. It is. He walked out through the clean side where every sealed cart had to be counted before it left. The review took 3 weeks. Denise found 27 personal or unsupported vehicle 17 trips, not all of them to Lake Mercer. Grant had used the escape for the golf club, home improvement pickups, and 2 airport runs. 3 documented supplier meetings reduced the total personal mileage, but they did not explain the weekends around them. The damaged rear panel matched a marina parking incident Grant had reported as warehouse handling. A Sunday cleaning charge matched the date. The insurance classification had never been updated for his regular use. Finance recalculated the mileage, fuel, card purchases, vehicle benefit, and payroll reporting. Grant repaid the personal amounts. The company corrected reimbursements for 11 employees whose claims had been denied under the revised policy for trips taken before it existed. Mine came to $486 plus the bonus Grant had withheld. The deposit reached my account on a Thursday morning. I opened the banking app, checked the number twice, and paid the Subaru repair balance. Then I drove to Celia's shop after work. My noodles were waiting on her cutting table beside a pile of black server aprons. "You're late," she said. "I stopped for gas." Reckless. I handed her the corrected reimbursement statement. She read the first page and looked at the total. "So you fed both needs?" "Eventually." "And how does it taste?" I opened one of the containers. "Like noodles." "That's because I raised you right." She pinned the statement beneath a brass pattern weight so the ceiling fan would not lift it. I watched the paper settle flat. Bellwether's owners offered Grant a reduced position overseeing vendor contracts without fleet, expense, or personnel authority. He resigned instead. His departure email was 4 sentences long and thanked the company for years of shared accomplishment. The new plant financing was delayed, then approved with additional reporting requirements. Tom complained about the expense of quarterly control testing exactly once in my presence. I pointed toward the fleet row. He said, "Fair." Dean received a written warning for moving Vehicle 17 without recording it. He accepted it, then requested an electronic checkout system that required every manager to enter a destination before a key cabinet would open. "You know Grant would have called this unnecessary overhead," I said. Dean watched the installer test the cabinet. Grant called lots of things overhead until he needed them to hide underneath. Nina was moved out from under the director's approval chain and put in charge of policy records. She began saving locked copies of every version with its effective date and approval history. She brought my original mileage forms to my desk in a sealed payroll envelope. The red stamp still bled through the paper. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know. This time I meant that I knew the apology was real. I still did not tell her it was fine. Tom offered me a promotion to client service manager. More money, more accounts, direct reporting to the ownership group. I declined it." He blinked. "You just spent 2 months proving you can manage this." "I proved I can do the work. I didn't prove I should rely on the same people to protect the role." "That includes me." "Yes." He sat with that for a moment. "What would you accept?" I asked for written authority to approve emergency personal vehicle use, access to the operational fleet records required to check availability, and a review process outside finance for disputed client service expenses. I also asked to remain close enough to dispatch to hear when a route was failing. Tom approved the structure after Denise reviewed it. The new policy fit on 1 page: business purpose, available vehicle, approval method, reimbursement rate, emergency exception. No sentence needed a laugh to make it work. The next route meeting took place in the gallery. The same people sat around the white table: Nina, Dean, Tom, the route supervisors, payroll staff. Denise joined remotely to present the corrected fleet findings and close the audit. My 6 mileage forms lay in front of me beside the corrected statement. The red personal denied marks were still visible, but each claim now had a green payroll cover sheet reading Business Reimbursed. Denise shared the map. She traced Vehicle 17's Saturday routes in blue: Bellwether to Lake Mercer, the building supplier, the marina, the golf club. Then she placed my client trips beside them, each one matched to a work order, receiving log or RFID event. Grant's routes wandered toward his private weekends. Mine ended at clinics. Dean looked at the table. Tom kept his eyes on the screen. Nina clicked her pen once and set it down. Denise said, the employee mileage had documented business purpose. The fleet mileage did not. Her voice was calm enough to leave no room for anyone to mistake vindication for revenge. I folded the corrected statement and put it in my red folder. Monday morning, I arrived at dispatch with coffee in my left hand. The route exceptions waited in their usual stack. Beyond the window, trucks idled in the gray light while drivers checked seals and lift gates. The brass tag marked 17 hung from its proper peg. I counted the keys. Then Ridgway sent an emergency alert about a failed cart seal. I took down the tag, signed the new checkout screen, and carried the key into the morning.